The Trojan Horse did not exist. It is merely a story from Greek mythology made to exaggerate and mystify Greece's win over Troy, as there is no archaeological evidence to confirm its historical existence. Cleopatra wasn't genetically Egyptian. She was of Macedonian Greek descent, a member of the Ptolemaic dynasty established by one of Alexander the Great's generals. Ancient Greek and Roman statues were not all white. They were originally painted in vibrant colors, a practice known as polychromy. Traces of paint found on many sculptures reveal that these statues were not the white marble we see today, but were colored to enhance their lifelike appearance. During the Middle Ages, most people weren't unhygienic. Public bathhouses were common in towns and cities, and in urban centers, waste management was a big concern. Furthermore, religious practices often emphasize cleanliness as a part of spiritual and ritual purity. The fall of the Berlin Wall did not cause the unification of Germany. Although it marked the beginning of the end of Germany's division, the formal reunification of East and West Germany occurred on October 3, 1990. Medieval torture devices were less commonly used than often portrayed. Many famous devices, like the Iron Maiden, are likely more myth than reality. Marco Polo did not introduce pasta to Italy after his travels to China. The myth began in a newsletter published by an association of American pasta makers called the Macaroni Journal. Pasta was common in Italy many years before the birth of Marco Polo. Roman Emperor Nero did not fiddle while Rome was burning. This story likely originates from later historians to depict Nero's alleged neglect and misrule. Nero may have played the lyre, but it's uncertain if he did so during the fire. Ferdinand Magellan did not complete the circumnavigation of the globe himself. While Magellan initiated the voyage in 1519 and led the expedition until his death in the Philippines in 1521, the circumnavigation was completed by his crew under the command of Juan Sebastian Elcano. Not everyone in the colonial era wore wigs. Wearing wigs or perukes was primarily a fashion trend among the wealthy and elite classes, including politicians, lawyers, and merchants, particularly in the 17th and 18th centuries. Joseph Ignace Guillotine did not die by the guillotine. He died in 1814 of natural causes. The Mayan calendar did not predict the end of the world in 2012. Scholars and experts have clarified that this date simply represents the end of a cycle and the beginning of a new one. Much like our own calendar starts a new year after December 31st. Mussolini did not make the trains run on time. Many of the punctuality and efficiency achievements of Italy's rail system were either exaggerated by propaganda or attributed to work that began before his rise to power. Lady Godiva did not ride a horse naked through Coventry as a form of protest against high taxes. Historical evidence suggests that this famous event was likely a myth rather than a factual event. Spices were not used in the Middle Ages to mask the flavor of rotten meat. During the Middle Ages, spices were an extremely expensive and luxurious item, and those who could afford them could also afford fresh meat. Newton did not come up with his theory of gravity when an apple fell down from a tree and hit his head. Newton did see an apple fall, which led him to consider why objects fall towards the earth, but there is no evidence it hit him. Walt Disney was not cryogenically frozen. He was cremated, and his ashes were spread across the Forest Lawn Memorial Park in California. Germany did not invade the Soviet Union in the winter during World War II. Germany's invasion of the Soviet Union, known as Operation Barbarossa, began in June 1941. Ninjas did not wear all-black outfits as they are portrayed in modern media. Historical ninjas typically dressed to blend into their surroundings, wearing practical and close-fitting clothing appropriate to their environment and missions. Benjamin Franklin did not discover electricity. Ancient Greeks had already observed static electricity, and by the 17th and early 18th centuries, European scientists like William Gilbert, Otto von Guericke, and Stephen Gray had made significant discoveries about electricity. The use of chastity belts during the Middle Ages was not a common practice. They were introduced by a German engineer as a form of satire during the 15th century, so it's very unlikely that their use during the Middle Ages was as common as it's normally portrayed. The Spanish Inquisition did not kill millions of people. While it was responsible for persecuting and executing thousands, particularly Jews, Muslims, and heretics, The actual number of people killed is estimated to be in the tens of thousands. Hitler did not create the Autobahn. Construction began in the Weimar Republic era. Hitler significantly expanded and promoted the Autobahn for economic and propaganda purposes once he came to power. The Black Death was not spread by rats, but by the fleas on rats, which transmitted the plague bacteria to humans. Christopher Columbus did not discover America. Long before Columbus arrived in 1492, numerous indigenous civilizations, such as the Aztec, Maya, Inca, and various tribes across North and South America, had been living on the continents for thousands of years. These indigenous peoples discovered, explored, and developed these lands long before any Europeans arrived. Furthermore, Viking explorers, led by Leif Erikson, established a settlement called Vinland in what is now Newfoundland, Canada, around the year 1000, nearly 500 years before Columbus. No one actually jumped off buildings during the crash of the stock market in 1929. The 100 Years' War did not last 100 years. It lasted 116 years, from 1337 to 1453, despite its name suggesting a century-long conflict. Cowboys are portrayed in a very exaggerated manner in modern media, often being described as lawless and chaotic people. Many frontier towns had organized communities with relatively low crime rates, and cowboys often worked as cattle herders and ranchers, contributing to the development of the American West. They also did not wear cowboy hats. The Middle Ages were not an age of stagnation in human development. This age saw the establishment of the first universities in Europe, such as the University of Bologna, the University of Paris, and the University of Oxford, as well as great advancements in the fields of medicine and math in the Muslim and Indian world. Not all gladiators were slaves. Many were volunteers who chose to fight for fame, money, or to pay off debts, though many slaves and prisoners of war also became gladiators. The Pilgrims did not land at Plymouth Rock first. They initially landed elsewhere, possibly in Provincetown. Plymouth Rock later became a symbolic site representing the location where they eventually disembarked and settled, but it is not the precise spot of their first landing. The Vikings were not a unified group. They were rather a collection of seafaring Norse tribes and communities from Scandinavia, including present-day Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. Julius Caesar did not invent the Caesar salad. The dish was invented in Tijuana by a man named Caesar Cardini, an Italian-American cook. George Washington did not cut down a cherry tree during his youth. The cherry tree anecdote was meant to illustrate Washington's honesty and integrity. It served as a moral example for young Americans, emphasizing the value of truthfulness. Ronald Reagan was never a serious candidate for the role of Rick Blaine in the 1942 film Casablanca. Although an initial studio press mentioned Reagan, the studio was already aware that Reagan would be unavailable due to his incoming military service. Gladiators did not always fight to the death. While some matches ended in death, many were designed to entertain the audience without necessarily being fatal. The decision to kill a defeated gladiator was often influenced by the crowd's reaction and the wishes of the sponsor of the games. Isaac Newton did not exclusively invent calculus. He developed a form of calculus independently around the same time as Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. The Library of Alexandria was not destroyed in a single event. Instead, it suffered multiple episodes of damage and destruction over several centuries. These included fires, such as during the Roman conquest of Alexandria in 48 BCE, and later events including attacks by various forces and the decline of the city. The Roman Empire did not fall in a single event in 476 AD. The Western Roman Empire is often considered to have officially fallen in 476 AD when the last Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by the Germanic chieftain Odoacer. The Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantine Empire, continued to exist for nearly another 1,000 years until the fall of Constantinople in 1453. Vincent van Gogh did not cut off his entire ear. In December 1888, he severed part of his left ear, specifically the lower lobe, during a mental health crisis. He then wrapped the severed piece in cloth and delivered it to a woman at a nearby brothel. The Pilgrims and Native Americans did not have a harmonious relationship. Initially, the Pilgrims had a relatively good relationship with the Wampanoag tribe, including the famous First Thanksgiving in 1621. However, conflicts and tensions eventually arose, leading to a series of disputes and wars, such as King Philip's War, which severely strained and often damaged relations between the two groups. Romans did not exclusively speak Latin in their daily lives. While Latin was the official language of the Roman Republic and later the Roman Empire, and was used in government, literature, and legal matters, many Romans also spoke Greek, as well as many other local languages. Henry VIII did not execute all his 6 wives. Only 2 of them were executed, while the others were either divorced, died in childbirth, or outlived him. Einstein's theory of relativity was not immediately accepted. It gradually gained widespread acceptance as it was tested and confirmed through experiments and observations. William Tell was not forced to shoot an apple off his son's head. According to the legend, Tell, a Swiss folk hero, was forced to perform this feat by a tyrannical ruler as a test of his skill and loyalty. The Bermuda Triangle is not inherently dangerous. Despite its portrayal in popular culture as a site of mysterious disappearances and incidents, scientific investigations have largely debunked claims of supernatural dangers, attributing most reported incidents to natural phenomena, human error, and navigational challenges rather than any unique risk associated with the region. The mafia never killed anyone by putting their feet in cement blocks and throwing them into the ocean. This is likely an urban legend made up to instill fear and panic among the communities in which the mafia resided. The phrase, "the British are coming," was not actually used by Paul Revere during his midnight ride. Historical accounts suggest he likely used a more discreet message to avoid alerting British patrols, as the British were seeking to arrest colonial leaders and seize supplies. The first Thanksgiving menu did not include turkey or pumpkin pie. The meal likely included venison, seafood, and local vegetables, but not the modern staples we associate with Thanksgiving. Marie Antoinette never said, "Let them eat cake." The phrase was falsely attributed to her decades after her death as part of anti-monarchy propaganda. It first appeared in the writings of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, referring to an unnamed princess when Marie Antoinette was still a child. Historians agree there is no evidence she ever said it. Shakespeare did not invent most of the common phrases attributed to him. Although William Shakespeare popularized many expressions, he did not create all of them. Some phrases existed in earlier literature, while others evolved from common speech of the time. His works did help preserve and spread many idioms, but he was not their sole origin. The Eiffel Tower was not meant to be permanent. Built for the 1889 World's Fair, the Eiffel Tower was originally intended to be dismantled after 20 years. Many Parisians considered it an eyesore. However, its use as a radio transmission tower saved it from demolition, ensuring its place as a global landmark. Abraham Lincoln was not strongly opposed to slavery from the beginning. While Lincoln personally disliked slavery, his early political stance focused on preventing its expansion rather than abolishing it outright. His main goal was preserving the Union, and only later did he become a strong advocate for emancipation, leading to the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. Van Gogh was not completely unrecognized in his lifetime. Although he struggled financially and sold only a few paintings, Van Gogh was not entirely unknown. He was supported by his brother Theo, exhibited his work, and received some critical recognition before his death. His fame, however, skyrocketed posthumously. Benjamin Franklin did not propose the turkey as the national bird of the U.S. Franklin once wrote a letter criticizing the choice of the bald eagle, calling it a bird of bad moral character, and praised the turkey as more respectable. However, he never officially suggested it replace the eagle as the national symbol. Leonardo da Vinci did not build all of his inventions. While Leonardo da Vinci sketched numerous groundbreaking ideas, such as flying machines and armored vehicles, most were never built during his lifetime. His designs were often theoretical, limited by the technology of his era, and many were only constructed centuries later. George Washington did not have wooden teeth. Washington suffered from dental issues and wore dentures made from a mix of materials, including human and animal teeth, ivory, and metal. The myth of wooden teeth likely arose from the staining and texture of his dentures, which may have given them a wood-like appearance. The Statue of Liberty was not a gift celebrating American independence. The statue was a gift from France to commemorate Franco-American friendship and shared ideals of liberty. While it arrived in time for the US centennial, it was not intended specifically to celebrate American independence, but rather to promote democratic values. The Moai statues of Easter Island were not just heads. Though most images show only the heads, the Moai statues actually have full bodies that extend underground. Many of these statues were buried over time due to soil erosion. The Wright brothers were not the first to attempt human flight. While the Wright brothers made the first controlled, sustained flight in 1903, many inventors before them experimented with gliders and powered flight, including figures like Otto Lilienthal. The Spartan 300 were not alone at Thermopylae. While the legend focuses on 300 Spartans, they were actually accompanied by thousands of Greek allies who also fought bravely against the Persians. Ancient Greeks did not always wear white togas. Togas were a Roman garment, not Greek. Greeks typically wore chitons, and their clothing came in a variety of colors, not just white.